Greetings. I am Dr. Rebecca Meacham, the advisor for Sheepshead Review, and I'm going to do a little series here on different elements of Sheepshead Review, the International Journal of the Arts at UW Green Bay, run, staffed, managed, designed, and made excellent by undergraduates at that campus and soon all four campuses in that system. The first thing that I want to share with you today is a little bit on the history of Sheepshead Review since 2002. So I'll just walk through a few of these things, some of our starting points. I'll tell you a little bit about the re-origins of the journal, the founding staff, and the first issues. To start, I should tell you that Sheepshead Review does actually exist as a real literal place. It has an office in Theater Hall on the Green Bay campus. It does take place in class form. It does have a physical component with people doing assignments in classrooms, as well as in other areas. You can see pictures of people doing activities, as well as working with the distribution of the journal on the slide. We also recently have taken a bit of a virtual component, some images from our most recent launch party, and I'll talk about what that is and what that means in just a bit, as we did over Zoom, and we've been doing over Zoom since March 2019 when we had to do a pivot for the pandemic and figure out how to run a magazine and create a magazine, a journal of the arts, entirely virtually. It does have a physical component in terms of it being a print journal. Sheepshead Review is print, but as I mentioned, we did do a pandemic pivot where you can obtain copies of the journal, or I guess a copy of the journal, virtually from Issuu, ISSUU. And you can see the print edition. You can page through it as if it is print, totally from the comfort of your own home and living room and screen. On this slide, you can see a few different sizes and shapes of the journal over the years as well, and I'll talk more about that in another video. Something important to note is that Sheepshead Review was a journal prior to 2002. It actually began with the founding of the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay, which was in the late 60s, early 70s, and it assumed many different forms and sizes over the years. However, by the time I, Rebecca Meacham, was hired in 2002 as an assistant professor at UW Green Bay, the journal was out of print, out of circulation, had no budget, had no staff. So one of the things I was charged with doing is resurrecting the Sheepshead Review. And so I got right to work in the very first day that I was teaching. I had an English 301 intermediate creative writing class, and I asked the students, would anyone like to take an independent study and help me relaunch the Journal of the Arts? And 5 students volunteered. And this is what we ended up doing. Here you can see an early mission statement appearing from one of the students who volunteered for independent study credit. And so this is Rod Zinkel writing with Julie Strand, trying to figure out the mission statement. Sheepshead Review, I should say, is a number of things. It is a student organization, which is why you're seeing Sheepshead Review trying to develop its mission statement. So it is part of the wide network of student organizations funded through student segregated fees at University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. So when we were relaunching, we decided to do that as a student organization, which is what it had been prior. It is also a class, and I'll talk a tiny bit about that in just a moment. And if you are watching this video, there's a good chance you are in that class. It's called English 324. Currently, it's called Practicum in Sheepshead Review, or Sheepshead Review Practicum. It also exists as internships for top level editors, what I call the top brass. And it also just exists as I said, as a student org. Students can come to those meetings that are usually held at class time, as well as outside of class to participate. So it exists on a few different levels. Back in 2002 and into 2003, there was some concern. Would we be able to get this journal going? And you can see by January of that year, second semester 2003, we were able to relaunch the journal. So there's announcements, here we go, our very first call for fictions. As you can see, it's kind of low rent because the very first email address we had was a Hotmail account. If anyone knows what those are, they're becoming increasingly obsolete. So we definitely have improved since then, but this is some of our early materials. And there we have it, the very first issue of the relaunched Sheepshead Review. And if you're visible on your screen, I'm holding up a copy right now. It's a small little guy, kind of cute. And the most important thing is it got made, it got done. And so we went to press with a cover image that was from a visual arts piece that was submitted to the journal. As you can see, we weren't very good at what we did because it's a very pixely, grainy image. It's not terribly sophisticated rendering of it, probably was too small. We probably blew it up too big for it to appear with quality on the cover, but there it is. It's also on the cheap. We were unable to afford very much. I believe this issue cost $1,100 for 500 copies. It's 80 pages, which is much smaller than our usual issue, which you'll see in a bit. It is, you might note, not a terribly colorful journal. In fact, it's cheaper to pay for one or two colors on a cover. So we chose a two-color cover in order to save costs. And that's what you see here. On the inside, for many years, when the journal first started back up in 2002 to 2003, we had a bizarre affinity for the sheepshead fish, which is actually extremely ugly. But we were interested in the sort of old illustrations of fish. So you'll see that's here in a lot of the early stuff as well. And we had a very lean crew of editors, a bunch of editorial assistants to start. We didn't even necessarily call them separate staff members, even though I think they were broken into staffs at that point. Yeah, this is our first issue. And you can see we've got this group of people that the top people here started off doing the independent study. And from the very start, I was surprised when I was going back and looking over all of this, that we actually had a web page back in 2003, which just feels like, well, it was a long time ago, but we did have that. And so here are the works of the first issue as well. I'm highlighting this one because this is one of our great former students who went on to do incredible things and is currently a professor, associate professor of creative writing at University of Nebraska, Omaha. And this is Lisa Faye Cooley. We also had a little note, and this is our very first editor's letter when I took over in 2003. And you can see how excited we are to have everything going from the beginning. That is the first of our videos, and I will continue telling you more about the story of Sheepshead Review in another video.